ahead and just stand and say the pledge with me.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's fantastic.
Yes, I agree. All right. The last Zoom meeting that we have. All right, so we have hearing adoption of the non-uniform defined pension plan. Patrick, will you go over this with us in the beginning? Do you want to do that?
Sure. Can you guys all hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Am I coming through clear? Okay. So
There's a serious delay, but you're
recall
coming
at
through.
the end
Yeah.
of 2019, at the end of 2019, you adopted an ordinance that basically froze the defined benefit pension plan for your non-uniform employees. So the next step would be for you to adopt a defined contribution plan for the new township employees starting as of January 1, 2020. So what the ordinance that has been advertised does is it authorizes the Board of Supervisors to enter into, execute, and approve the proposed defined contribution plan for your non-uniform employees. And the exhibit to the ordinance is the actual plan that was prepared by R.J. Hall. And if you recall, you provided some input with respect to the proposed plan. So again, all this ordinance does is it authorizes you to adopt, approve, and execute the proposed non-uniform defined contribution plan. It has been advertised for a public hearing this evening. So with that, I think we can open up the public hearing.
Patrick, this is John. There were no emails that came into me regarding this, no questions from the public that came into me on this particular item.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, unless there's any additional public comment, you can close the public hearing. I'm assuming, John, there is no public comment at this point?
Correct.
Okay, public hearing is closed, and at this point, if the board wanted to entertain a motion to adopt ordinance, I'm not sure what the number is, which would be an ordinance authorizing the execution and adoption of the non-uniform defined contribution plan for South Londonderry Township.
Okay, we have that down in the new business. Can we just do it then, Patrick?
Absolutely. Sorry.
Okay.
Jumped the gun.
No, that's okay. Thank you. All right, do
Thank
we
you.
have any public input?
There were two items that came in. There were two requests for the board to entertain. The first request came from Pat Krebs, and it was regarding the possibility of the board pursuing the 2020 WalkWorks grant. There's no local match, and it was previously passed out to all the supervisors here for entertainment if we would be willing to pursue this grant.
So I'll say the same thing that I said before. What makes me nervous about this particular grant is, yes, it's money to do a study, but then within 12 months you have to enact or make some sort of progress on what the plan is. So I'm not willing to entertain it unless you two are or have questions, Jack or Bill.
What was the project they were looking at? What it was really, the way I understand it was funds available to do a study for biking, for safety for crosswalks, designing the improved safety.
That's my question is that we already have two looking at a lot of stuff, right? We already had them looking at crosswalks, things like that. Can we?
Well, it's not monies to actually do the improvements, as far as I understand. It's monies to get to the study done.
But I guess what I'm saying is
It would supplement with two, I guess, or an engineer.
what I'm asking, like, we already asked them to take a look at this. That's correct. We asked them that. So if they're gonna go farther into it anyway, like, I guess what I'm saying is, can we use this money to pay part of that?
We can, but from what I understand, we can, but what makes me a little apprehensive is that in there it says within 12 months to enact some of it. So if they come back and say the plan is $400,000, kind of on the hook to start that plan and some process. I don't know that budget-wise that.
Like, John, are we on the, like, do we definitely have to implement part of this? Say that again? Do we definitely have to implement part of the plan if they're gonna study? Do we not?
I don't know enough about it. It's kind of vague in some of the information that I read into it. So again, the request there is to go and put a proposal through, and there's a webinar coming out here on the 14th about it. We want to pursue learning more about it.
I mean, I'd just like to know a little bit more, only because if we can offset our costs of something we already were having the engineers look at.
I guess the question is, where's the priority on this also?
And we asked them to look at it, so.
Well, but and they're also looking at zoning, they're also looking at some other things too, so. where does
I'm
that
sure,
fit
so
in?
I'm sure hours are billed on that, right? Like, we asked them to look at it, so they're billing us for it.
Does Frank have any input on?
John, can you hear me?
Some other times.
So if you guys can hear me, we are currently doing a project down in Denver Borough in Lancaster County with that grant. So what I can do is I'll talk with our gentleman that wrote the grant, and John, you know him, Sam Meckley.
Oh, yes.
And what I can do is I can get the details, and then John and I can have a conversation. I do recommend that you take advantage of the workshop that's coming up. But in the meantime, if it's an opportunity to, get some funding to take a look at, some of the key transportation corridors in the township, and, if we have enough information, to make it, the preparation of the grant to be, streamlined and straightforward, it may be something that you want to consider. However, let me get with Sam, and, I'll get back with John, and I'll give you all the details.
I don't disagree with Faith on, like, it just depends, like, what the end is, right? Like, but we felt enough that we asked them to take a look at it. So there's money there, and depending on what the hook is at the end, might as well we see what's there and what the requirements are, in my opinion.
Okay, so the webinar is on the 14th. Is that what you have, John?
That's correct. Yes.
And then, Frank, you're going to ask the gentleman and see.
Yep. I'll have a quick conversation. Yep, I'll have a quick conversation with them and just get the details on, what we did down in Denver Borough, and get back with John and, be in a position to update the board.
Okay. Jeff, do you have anything on that?
Sounds like a good plan.
Okay. The
other item was Jane Popko sent us a note also requesting for a grant to be submitted for the AARP Community Challenge. And what it's for is to request a pavilion, picnic tables, benches for the Campbelltown Community Park. The hook on this is this it is due to be submitted on May the 15th. And I did a little bit of research on this because this would be the other side of the match, per se, to existing grants that the South Londonderry Township had received from the Marcellus 2015 shale grant for $7,500, and also 2016 Marcellus shale grant for $7,000 for the same project. But again, we were looking for matching funds. I did a little bit of research and worked backwards on this, and I'm finding where those original grants, they were only good for 24 months, and only one of them had an extension done. So basically, all of those grants, you'd have to kind of go back and work backwards to find out if the grant monies are still earmarked for the municipality anymore, because 2018, the extensions would have ended on the one, and the other one, an extension wasn't asked for. So I haven't received notification that I can find that the grants, the money was taken off the table, but those are some questions too that, are the grant monies even available to be matched against at this point? But again, we have only a couple days to give an answer to Jane to submit this or not, too.
And the email was that she was going to submit it, correct?
Correct, through CC.
Okay.
Well, I'm not sure if it was through CCA or not. It would be this would be a future project of CCA, yes.
Maybe not the only one we asked for, for donations. If it's something she's gonna do, I don't know why she needs our support. I mean, I don't know why she needs our permission.
Well, the only thing that makes why I wanted it brought here for our permission was because anyone applying for a grant, if it's not something that the township had interest in, we don't want to just let people apply for grants and then.
I would agree. I mean, I would think you're very limited success as far as matching funds. So, and knowing a little bit of information that was provided,
when I looked up the AARP, something.
Community challenge,
and it didn't give a specific dollar amount, said depending on the need and what the parents thought. It could be anything from a couple hundred to a couple thousand to 10,000. So there didn't seem to be, I didn't see any hook or anything that said, you have to do X, Y, and Z if you get it. You don't need any of that. But.
And John, the one grant is still good.
and based on what I found, no, they have all passed their terms, and we did not ask for extensions in the type of fashion, or the extensions that were asked for were came in line.
Now, I remember in the past, we would just, so one of the managers would just call in and we usually work on a problem, not saying that that's still the case.
Yeah, I think we probably could, because like I said, I didn't receive anything, I didn't see anything in the files that said all the money were taken off the table, so I think a phone call certainly take care of that. I just didn't, I think I've done that.
And that grant would be eligible to match this, right?
As far as I understand, as long as we have matching, it can be any, even as the fees from the county or from, as far as I'm to understand, yes, because when I went to propose the one that I did a couple years ago.
Started with
and they said even, like say we were to have someone from the township do some of the labor, that counts as in kind, so as matching. So are we good with Jane pursuing this then? Is that what I'm hearing? You don't have a problem, Jeff? Do you mind getting back to her, John? I don't know if she's on.
No, she is on. I saw her name there, so.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, the only thing I wanted to know was if those two Marcellus shell grants were available, then I would ask for less money from the AARP. If the grants weren't available, then I would ask for the total amount for the pavilion, the park, picnic tables, and the benches. And I think the county, the last time I heard from Bill Ames, I think he said the county still had those, but I think you'd have to call the Lebanon County office to confirm whether they're available or not, still available.
Yeah.
But I was under the impression that they were still available via,
Well, one of either, if John doesn't have time tomorrow, I'll come in and I'll call in tomorrow and we'll figure out if it's still, and get that to you.
okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thanks, Jim.
That's all that I had from public input that had been submitted.
Okay. So the approval of previous meeting minutes from 14. The only thing I saw in there is it said that it was recorded by Dot. Did Dot record via Zoom?
Yes, she did.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that was. Oh,
Or she was, you know what, there was an email from her today, she's having problems. She was going to, I don't know if it was successful or not. I talked with her today via email and she's going to attempt it again.
So I should announce that Dot
Probably should.
is attempting to record, is it video or audio? Does that matter, Patrick?
Of whether or not someone's going to be recording, it's the
After
audio.
that, I need to announce that the recording, whether video, audio, both, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, if we know someone's recording, we'll just announce it. I think you already did, you just did, but.
I did, yeah, I just didn't know if I need to announce audio or she's recording the Zoom session. I don't know how that works or even if that's possible, but Dot's attempting to record something of this meeting. How about that? That'll cover us. So moving back to the meeting minutes here, then I guess it was recorded last time, so the minutes I found to be accurate. Do I have a motion to approve?
So with a second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we don't have anything from the workshop that was canceled. Bill and payroll list 820 and 920. Do I have a motion to approve?
I made a motion to approve those, although I only had one on. I did get a chance to review some copies, but I only had one of those.
I only had 8 also. Did you have? I just got 9 tonight.
Yeah,
Is that what you?
Yeah, it's supposed to be, oh, there's something right there.
I only, like I said, I did get to review
okay.
some copies, but I did not see what I had.
Oh, it should have been in your package.
So I'm fine with
You're trying to vote.
motion.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Township Manager report. John, do you have anything for us?
I think it is. I wanted to continue to thank everyone for their continued support of all the township efforts throughout this COVID-19 shelter-in-place event. The highway, sewer, police department should be commended for their extra efforts and collaboration the other week addressing the 3+ inches of rain, flooding, and wind damage throughout the township. Just a reminder that the township building remains closed to the public, but payments can still be mailed or placed in the drop box, and staff continue to address emails and telephone calls. We've had several compliments on the recent riparian buffer tree planting, which has taken place at the north end of Campbelltown soccer fields and the walking trail. Later in the agenda, the board will be considering the expansion of the tree planting project to include the southern end of the Campbelltown soccer field, as well as onto the Campbelltown Fire Department property with the funding through the unspent grant funds. I also want to thank the Campbelltown Fire Department for their approval and support of extending this tree planting project onto their property. Coach Wagner is also to be commended for the work done at the lawn baseball field with the construction of the new dugouts and the flagpole in the outfield. Isn't Morgan? Morgan is not Wagner. I'm sorry, you're right. It was Morgan. Yeah, no, thank you for that clarification. If you recall, he was in here. It was one of my first meetings, either January or February, and the board needed the approval of seat donations, and it turned out really nice out there. So obviously, we all can't wait for the formal baseball season to begin in the near future, whatever that may be. Those of you who are sports enthusiasts like I am. I also realize it's only May, but a preliminary schedule for the upcoming 2021 budget meetings is being developed. Once finalized, I'll review it at an upcoming work workshop or board meeting, as well as posting to the website. So, my staff, I talked with them a little bit this morning about it, and their eyes rolled back and kind of glossed over a little bit with budget season. But we do need to start early so we can get through everything, and it's a learning experience for me and for everybody else. So just wanted to put that on everybody's radar. So that's all that I have.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to solicitor packet, do you have anything besides what's on the agenda?
Nothing except for a brief executive session discussion following the meeting on litigation.
Thank you. Okay, Chief.
Okay, so during the month of April, officers reported on 172 incidents. As you can imagine, with things kind of shut down, that's lower than usual, probably down about 30-35% from a normal month. So the time we don't spend on calls, officers are cars patrolling. So the patrol miles are about average for a given month at 4,400 miles. So during April, we had one non-traffic citation, 7 traffic citations, 0 DUI arrests. And officers are continuing to modify their response to calls using personal protective equipment where suspected that we needed, distancing on calls, not responding, handling calls by phone wherever possible. Our supply of PPE is still sufficient for the foreseeable future. And the only other thing I have is that the radio booster system is delayed somewhat. On some parts of the read, but Bob Moyer is keeping me up to speed, and hopefully before too long we'll be able to start work on that.
Okay.
That's all I have.
All right.
And Chief, just to clarify that, the booster is for the building.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I do have a report here from Kendra Hoffman for the library. She emailed it to me. Library board met via Zoom on Tuesday, April 21st. They will meet again Tuesday, May 19th. The Vineyard event has been moved to Saturday, October 17th, 2020 at Hershey Vineyard. Details will be forthcoming. The board met with Mike Badash at the April meeting to review its investment portfolio. The library was closed until further notice by order of the state. The library will be allowed to time for preparation and guidance on a phased-in approach when they are able to re-enter. The position currently held by Mary Strauss has been changed from administrative assistant to office manager. UPMC Pinnacle will sponsor summer learning program for $1,000. Capital campaign update of the $516,440 pledged so far, $331,724 has been received. Annual fund drive update, $2,791.46 has been raised in 2020. The Dr. C. H. Hand Library sign has been placed over the entrance door in honor of the library's largest capital campaign donor. The annual book sale is scheduled for Saturday, July 11th through Thursday, July 16th at the PALMYRA First United Methodist Christian Church. And that was by Kendra. Thank you, Kendra, for getting that in.
I was going to say, I don't know what the stats are right now. PALMYRA library development, I do know. Some other libraries, that library cards statewide are up over 100%.
I know my boys and myself are hurting from not into the library during this time.
Number of the use and the fundraising there, hats off to them, they do a great job.
Yeah, I mean, it's neat that you can get books online, but it really doesn't.
Right, it's not the same thing,
It's
but
really not.
I guess they
access to vetted cases. Like some of that is like, what's the car manual? Children's. I forget how you say it. Children, how you say it. Yeah, but people are doing a lot of that stuff at home, so they're using these vetted databases. So it's cool what they're doing. But I agree, it doesn't substitute for it. And I can tell you a lot of those folks want to get in and have their buildings open, but that is under the direct control. That's making part of the education. So.
All right, moving on. Campbelltown, did they give a report? I mean, Cal? Did you guys see one? Okay. Jack, do you have one for Lon?
I do. Continues to be fairly quiet, which is good. 9 calls for the month, 7 to South Londonderry, 1 to Derry Township, 1 to Mount Joy, and kind of a note over 400 hours.
Yeah. Do you have anything for PALMYRA area rec? No. Just run it up. You're going to? It was canceled. Okay. I didn't know if they did something Zoom or not. So our planning commission was canceled. Historical, I don't know that they met. Do you know anything, John? If they met via Zoom or anything? Okay.
Let's see back and forth or something. First coming in or out.
But nothing since our last meeting. And fire board has been pushed back to ahead of this next month. And then authority, they had a Zoom meeting
Last Thursday.
but we didn't have those minutes yet. So, okay. Special orders, township officials input. All right, moving on to new business and 2019 audit report. We have a special guest here, Angela Shea, presentation. Sure. Wherever you want. You're our only guest, so you can. Thank you for inviting me. Audit. That was prepared. I did give you a handout. Yes. Thank you. When we present the audit, we also include a communication with those charged with government and a management letter. Those are just for the supervisors and management review. And I would assume that you each received a copy of it when you received the audit. The auditor's report, which is found on page 1, 2, 3, tells you what the auditor does and what you as the supervisors are responsible for. So the management, the supervisors, is responsible for the fair presentation of the financial statement and designing, implementing, and maintenance of internal controls, and preparation and fair presentation of financial statements. The auditor is responsible for expressing an opinion on the financial statements based on the audit procedures. And from our audit report, you can see that we did state that the financial statements referred to in the audit were presented fairly, in conformity with the modified cash statement. Just some financial highlights from the year. I don't know if you have the financial statement with you, but on page 9 to 10 is where the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for the government funds will be shown. The non-major funds are detailed back on page 44 to 45. I did take some information looking back at last year's audit and compare it to this year's audit to give you a little recap. The taxes increased this year by about $90,000. $6,000 of that was from real estate taxes, and about $84,000 of that was from earned income tax increases. Other increases were in grants and gifts, which increased about $40,000. $14,000 of that was an increase in the pension aid. $6,000 was an increase in recycling grant. About $5,000 was from fire insurance tax, and $7,000 was from county grants that were higher than the previous year. There was also your other income was substantially higher from last year, and that was from the health insurance payment that was received in
The interest income increased $14,000, and overall total general fund revenue increased by $198,000 last year. In your general fund expenditures, you had total decreases of $253,000. Of that, administrative expenses decreased $90,000, and that was from the capital projects fund. Prior year expenses were higher than 2019. Your protection to persons and property increased $76,000. Your highways and streets decreased $135,000. And your employee payroll taxes and benefits decreased $84,000. This left you with a net fund increase of $243,000. $315,000 of that was in the general fund. The capital projects fund increased $36,000. Your non-major other government funds increased $72,000. And your highway aid fund decreased $180,000, which left you $6,000 in the highway aid fund as a carryover. Moving on to the proprietary funds, which would be your sewer funds. You can find the revenues expenditures on page 12. That stayed relatively the same as the prior year. Your rents were increased by about $5,000, and your expenditures decreased by $17,000, of which about $14,000 was from collection and treatment costs. This left you with a net position increase of $70,000. I'm sorry, net revenue. Yeah. On page 16 is your statement of changes in fiduciary net position, which was quite nice for last year. You had contributions from employers, members, and state aid of $278,000, and investment earnings and appreciation of $711,000, which was compared to $240,000 depreciation in the prior year. Excuse my typo there. Benefits paid during the year were $119,000. Expenses were $12,000. Leaving you with an increase in net position for your fiduciary fund of $858,000. So it was a nice year. I only highlighted two notes in the financial statement. Note 4, which is on page 24 to 25, is your long-term debt. And on the page 25, you can see a detail of your current obligations, including principal and debt service requirements over the term of the loans. And the other note was note 6 for the net pension liability. That's on page 31. And there it shows you what your liability is for pension. The liability compared to the net position or assets available. And for your non-uniform pension, you were covered at 90%, which was compared to 82% the previous year. And the police pension is covered 98%, which was 88% the previous year. And hopefully, this year will improve.
Probably not with the current affairs.
Not currently, but.
Meet with RJ Hall, will be some changes on that. So hopefully that will be the market tag for us. Everybody's taking it. So
Last year, your numbers were very nice.
Yes.
Yeah. And that is all I have.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Okay, so moving on to ordinance 219, which is a non-uniform defined contribution pension plan. We did a hearing earlier. Do I have a motion to approve ordinance 219?
Second.
Any questions? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Keep the file here. The floodplain ordinance, approval to advertise for public hearing. There was some dialogue on the who wants to talk about that? Patrick or both? John?
I'll start out. We had
Yeah,
an ordinance that was proposed. We had an ordinance that was proposed, and so I guess we're still kind of working on the fine tuning of that between Frank and also with Patrick and the board. But we could still advertise or make a motion to advertise later on, because we have a deadline of getting an ordinance approved by, I think it's July the 8th that takes effect. So the next meeting is June, so it works out perfectly and timing wise on it. We just have to work on the fine tuning of the ordinance internally to be sure that all the detail. Frank and Patrick, you want to add something to that?
Sure. This is Pat. The majority of the ordinance, it's a floodplain ordinance. It's pretty technical in nature to a certain extent. So my comments weren't with regards to the technical aspect of it. It was more so just some of the provisions, if you read them. And I think Frank didn't have an issue with any of my suggested changes. The one was, the way it read initially, whoever, no matter where you're at, if you apply for any permit for construction in the township, regardless of being in the floodplain or not, you still need the permit from the floodplain administrator. And I had just suggested to include in that provision that you only need that specific permit from the floodplain administrator is if it's construction located within one of these floodplains or floodways or an area that's actually covered within the scope of this ordinance. And I don't think Frank had an issue with that. The other item was just a repealer, which he agreed with. And then there was a requirement in the initial draft for the floodplain administrator to forward the application and plan to the county. And I don't know why we'd want the township to pick up that burden. I think we could just require it of the applicant to forward their application to the county and provide any response from the county. And in the event that the county does have recommendations, that they incorporate it into their plan. And again, I think Frank was on board with that. But again, Frank, if I'm misstating anything, let me know. And just with respect to John, assuming the board does authorize the ordinance to be advertised, we should make those slight, I'll call them non-substantive changes before we advertise it to be consistent with the second-class township code.
I have one question for you, Patrick. You said about having a repealer in there, meaning repealing all previous ordinances. But
Correct.
Doesn't it in section 203 say that if there's any ordinance prior that is conflicting, the more restrictive shall apply? Would that then be taken out of there?
Let me see. If it would conflict, that's in the event, that would be if something in the floodplain ordinance, I don't have it up in front of me, but that's if something in the floodplain ordinance kind of is maybe a carryover of the saldo, but say the saldo's provision is more restrictive, the saldo provision would control. The repealer would
Okay,
really be as if South Londonderry. Correct. I mean, if you have a prior floodplain ordinance or an ordinance that addresses floodplain regulation, you would probably want to repeal that. Now, if we don't want to, and if we want to, there is the potential of confusion between the two. So I think if there is another floodplain restriction or ordinance on the books, a repealer would make sense.
Okay, yep, I get it now. That was just confused about whether or not. I'm good. Thank you.
But Patrick, I agree with you. We can tweak everything to make sure that it's ready to go before we advertise it. We can authorize it. Yes, that's where we're at. Yes.
Frank, did you have anything to add?
No, I do agree with the points that Patrick made and that John made, and it is a technical ordinance, and it requires just not the zoning officer and township manager to administer it. So you have to have a pretty strong backing on hydrology and so forth, and I kind of pointed that out. As a floodplain administrator, for another municipality, my job is to identify if a project is in the floodplain, inform a applicant, and provide them the information that they need. But I bring in our hydrology engineers and the experts when it comes time to review that information. So it's just not the floodplain administrator looking at all that technical information.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Do I have a motion then to proceed?
I would make a motion to proceed with this permit changes that were circulated. Second.
Any questions? All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right, moving on to the bid results for 2020 road projects. John, do you want to speak on this?
Sure. Yeah, this was budgeted funds out of the liquid highway fuels funds for 2020. There's micro surfacing bid went out on 10 bid, and the low bid came. There were two bidders, and the low bid came in at $141,964.25 from Asphalt Paving Solution LLC. Ultimately, the original budget for this project was around $170,000. So this is a very, very good number for us that still roll over the funds or funds or use as unspent funds in other projects. So the board's looking to, or the township's looking for the board to approve the loan there.
Do either of you have questions?
I don't.
All right, do I have a motion then?
I make a motion we forward it to the loan there. Second.
Questions? All those in favor? Aye. All right. Moving on to Law and Fire Company, the hydraulic rescue equipment quotes. Jim, do you want to speak on this at all? Or should we just proceed? Or do you want to speak? I don't know if he's on.
I'm here. If you want me to speak, I can.
Do you have anything
the
you
equipment we're purchasing.
say?
No, I think the equipment that we're purchasing replaces a unit that's fairly old. It was a 2003 model, and it's very heavy gasoline-powered equipment. We're replacing it with some very light battery-powered equipment that has more capabilities than the tool it replaces. So it was time for us.
Any questions?
No, but I'd like to make a comment. I actually was invited to the Law and Fire Company to see a demonstration of this equipment, and I was impressed with how quick and smoothly this piece of equipment worked. And, the firefighters, the rookies there that were coming through, they were quick to use and demonstrate it, because that's what they did that one night. And the other thing I want to point out here is under the bid threshold. So a couple quotes out here. So we're okay with the $20,859 also.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve this purchase then?
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase.
All right. Second?
I'll second.
All right. Any questions? All right. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Moving on to old business. Campbelltown riparian planting, extension of planting quote. right one here. John, do you wanna tell me what it is?
Sure.
Okay.
I think there was, this is, and I mentioned it earlier in my manager's report, there was funds left over from the original $90,000, and ultimately went back to renting agency, and they said definitely if we could expand the project, they would prefer not to have any fund back to them. So we worked with the engineers on drawing some plans, worked with the fire company at Campbelltown to take a look at some of their area, which also would provide some shade down the road and on Stream Bank, together. And really, the quotes that came in were here, every single dollar would be spent on this using the by unit workstations that the landscaping company had previously provided us.
Any questions?
No, it's great.
Yeah, I walk there now like a lot.
Your favorite place to walk?
It's one of my,
Something around.
10 years from now, you'll have shade over there.
I will tell you, I did not do that previous to this. This shot.
Can't hear what they're saying.
We need a motion to approve this then.
I'll make it.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All right. Mount Gretna Sewer District sewer bill increase.
Back on December the 30th, or 31st it would be, is when the bill actually came in from the Mount Gretna Authority. This is for the, just the Mount Gretna residents up by Timber River, the Timber, there you go, all that, up in that area. It's impacting those areas. But what the Mount Gretna Authority did was on the bill, they made mention that there was going to be a 5% increase of the 2020 sewer assessments. So fast forward, I came in, the bill came through, and now I'm looking at this and seeing the increase that we were supposed to be paying. And the question that I had for the supervisors on this, since we have a pretty lean budget in this particular fund, whether or not we want to consider increasing our capping with 5% increase onto the residents on their bills.
So you would think it would, but for some reason, this particular
entity, this 08 fund, is not covered under the authority. And that's part of the reason why you want to have a meeting with the authority on this to talk about these items. So historically, this particular sewer line has been out there since 1930, maybe before that even. The sewer authority, municipal authority, was established in 1984, and at the time, the way I understand it, at the time that they started the authority, this particular line was not included in their auspices. Although sewer individuals service and take care of it, they do the billing, but this particular OE fund, I wish Angie was still here to talk to her about it. It's actually on our books, it's not in the authority book, so we're the ones that write the checks and take care of everything.
The difference here is the sewer goes to the plant.
Correct.
Okay. So the sewer goes to the plant,
Or goes to the Mount Gretna Authority plant. We sewer authority owns and maintains the collection system. And we pay the Mount Gretna.
But if there's issues out there, our authority individuals, sewer authority individuals are out there. They're working on trying to clean the lines and doing things. So it's a quasi type of operation here, and that's why I raised the question to the residents. No, that's.
it has not been reduced, correct? He is looking to see if we can test this increase.
So our cost got raised.
I got it. I mean, my issue is residents haven't been notified, so they can't come. Like, there's no reason for them to comment.
I think so. Do you ever get notices that your sewer bills when it increase?
That's a good question.
Well, I guess I don't remember getting, the only reason I know is because Rob is saying, unit uses.
The bill was passed on after the budget was approved, so 5% wasn't approved. I already talked with the authority, once the sewer right fee is over, I'm going to go out there and jump to the stage, and she's in charge of it.
Okay, yes. So you can talk with him a little bit so that in the future, when they're talking about these rates, they can get into a little cleaner so we can anticipate these and we can put out on this.
I mean, they were going through their budgets, we were going through our budgets, we didn't hear anything about it. But now we're in a position where we have to vote to pass this on, to the residents without them knowing about it. I just haven't, I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm just saying the whole thing falls on our laps, and part of that is why authorities established in the first place. I mean, honestly, because municipal officials don't want to sit around raising people's sewer rates, in my opinion. But, that's exactly what.
So we've already missed this past billing cycle.
Right.
The next billing cycle is June. Is it every quarter?
Yeah, it's every quarter.
It looks so, we have an example of this.
Yeah, this is what we pay. Now, the question is then, how do we do the billing internally here? And I know that quarters, depending if it's the 09 fund versus the 08 fund. So I apologize on this. So if we would want to pass this on, my recommendation is let's do it the second half of the year.
Well, I guess my point was going to be the June billing, we could put on there, your bill will be increased by whatever percentages next billing state. So that way there's at least a lead time to know that instead of this billing cycle being increased by.
I feel much more comfortable with that.
Well, I'm trying to think back, and I think we might get statements that when they are going to increase, like, hey, expect it to be raised in 2000.
I'm pretty sure I do. I'm pretty sure I do.
So to give you some idea, I believe the numbers were $170 for customers. The normal customers out there. I hear a couple of them that are really with a 5% increase on the quarter, it's $8.50 extra.
I got it.
So we have a motion of some sort to put a note on the next billing cycle that it will be increased and then move forth from there. And you're suggesting a 5%.
It would be 5%, just passing on what was passed
So we would
on.
miss 2 billing cycles with that 5%. So we would
Just be dropping them off now instead of bringing in.
Here's the situation, we have zero.
when what comes in, what
This
comes
has got to be
from that?
passed through. We can't pass this cost off to other residents or users. So we have to recover this. Even if I'm all about giving them some notice, but I think we would have to increase it enough that actually covers the cost. So we can't.
So that at the end of the year, it's not negative.
Well,
I think there's a surplus.
There is a surplus. There's a surplus. We're going to budget about $15,000 back in offers for renovations and things like that. Well, I think it's going to be down. I think it's only $10,000 back in this because based on the budget, based on some of
For that same
But again, and I know we're seeing it again, but we're putting money back for some type of project that we have $0 around. We have no idea what the sewer are explaining to the money.
Well, they're not going to be doing anything. It's all us. One of the things that we're talking about is that before they would even entertain taking it on, they want an engineer study done of what they would be assuming because there's terracotta line out there, there's cast iron above ground line out there. So there's some work that has to be done. This fund, you guys have been good stewards of that over the years, and there's $400,000 of funds available for renovations. Now, how far does that go?
So they would be, okay, so they would be controlling.
I think we need to have a bigger discussion on the authority.
And that's the whole point.
We do, we will. It's in the works.
I mean, not just with them, but they're only, right, we're the only municipality in terms of approving the authority, right? Like we manage and work with other municipalities, but
Yes.
right, and they don't have a huge amount of debt, correct?
Not the authority side of things, do not, you know, they're sitting on
Right.
quite a bit of revenue.
Yeah, so
There's infrastructure that they just approved the manhole project. So
I just think, you know, I haven't heard from them, like, since in the time I've been here. They don't seem to think they really need to talk to us when they approve a budget. And there are ways to dissolve an authority, especially if it has no debt and it's a single municipality authority. I'm not saying I want to, I'm saying that they need to understand, in my opinion.
Well, they have reached out now. We have a letter. We're going to.
Yeah, I mean, I know, but they reached out because it was an impetus because of you.
It's done.
Because
I'm shaking the tree, just asking the question.
I would like to have a good relationship with them. I also, it just seems like they keep acting and without even considering us. And that's the second time. First it was our employees, and now it's like, oh, by the way, you know.
That's the whole point of the meeting. Right, our work. So I think that's.
We're getting there. We're gonna get there.
I know, but I mean, I would, hey, Patrick,
I mean, I'm listening.
I mean, with an authority with no debt that's created by a single municipality, I think Department of State, like disincorporation or something, but it's not impossible, right?
No, it's the process is probably set forth in either their articles or the, but somewhere there's a process. It's also set forth in the Authorities Act. But I think the first step, I mean, they've reached out, suggested a joint meeting. I think that's probably a good first step to see if we can get everyone on the same page.
And why are we meeting without our attorney or our staff?
No, it will be
We are.
with the attorney, not staff.
Why are we meeting without you?
At their request. Well, I wasn't at the meeting, or I was only on Zoom, but I couldn't communicate with them, so it was their decision.
Why should it be their decision? I guess that's my question. I don't know, I guess I'm a little fuzzy. Right.
Do we need to get you food?
Probably staying at home.
Yes!
I'm not, we can always recreate.
I mean, I will,
We're gonna be okay. We're gonna be all right.
I mean, I will say, I will,
First, I know that, I mean, we've never approved, in all the meetings I've been sitting, I've never heard the township side of things approve anything with Hawaiian. I don't know anything about it. We're not making the decisions on what gets prepared, doesn't get prepared out there. Because now we have to. I'm out. So, I'm not a union motion. I know we have.
Okay, that's fine. Then let's have, no, I
Do you want? No, but I agree with your point. It's not like. Okay.
Well, and you know, what'll help here a little bit, Jack, is when we get into the budget process, so we talk about each of the funds. This is the reason
So
why.
I'm aware of the fund and the situation out there. I just was not aware of the authority to make the decision. I'm aware of it, you know, how the collection stuff works out there, where it goes, and why. I understand why it's different, but I did not realize the authority. It's okay.
Isn't the one making decision on the rate?
The rates and, you know, isn't operating that system, but.
Yeah. Well, maybe after our meeting
Sort
with
of.
them, we can.
Sort of.
They sort of
Figure
seem
out
like
how
they
to-
are, but then.
All right, so we're gonna table this, then, do I hear a motion to table this? All right, all those in favor? Moving on to the Fifth Amendment to roadwork agreement and the authorization of heavy lifting, or not heavy lifting, heavy hauling. All right. Who wants to take this? Patrick?
Sure, I can take this. As you're aware, we have that heavy hauling agreement with Sunoco ever since they started their project. This would be the Fifth Amendment, and the only proposed addition is that they're extending the time frame for the agreement for another year until May of 2021. No other changes are being made. I reached out to John, who I believe spoke with Scott, and I don't think there's anything, there hasn't been anything in the last year that has raised any issues with respect to the conditions of the road and or how they're operating. So I'm not aware of any issues. And again, this Fifth Amendment would just simply extend the existing roadway agreement for heavy hauling. And that's it, in a nutshell.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. UGI easement, Patrick, any development on that?
I forwarded if you recall from your last meeting, we discussed the potential, basically an encroachment agreement as opposed to an easement because UGI had some concerns about the ability to record something given the fact it's paper street. I sent a draft agreement to them probably, I don't know, a week and a half ago or so. I haven't heard back yet. He did say that he forwarded it on to their legal department. So once I hear back from them and we get in a final form, it'll be ready for someone for the township to sign. The question, I mean, you could simply, you've already conditionally approved moving forward with it. If you wanted to authorize the chairwoman to sign it once it's finalized, you can do that tonight if you wanted to. Otherwise, you know, once we get the final version back from UGI, it'll just have to wait until your next meeting.
I make a motion that we authorize the chairman to sign it based on the satisfaction of you.
Hey, Patrick, I abstained on this initial vote, but this is just having him authorized to sign something, right? Yeah.
Correct. This is just authorizing Faith to execute the agreement once it's finalized.
I was thinking you said manager. Yeah, so I think I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Moving on to the zoning ordinance revisions. Should I?
Well, we tag team.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, I'll start. One of the things that I was asked to do when I first started was to start working and moving the zoning and the ordinance changes along. And in looking at this and seeing what was going on and researching this and then working with Frank and I kind of sat down and I talked with some of the board members to see what we could do to expedite this a little bit. And so there were a couple of approaches that came through here. And one of those was basically to have the ordinances rewritten with modifications that Frank has already worked on with Don, with the previous manager, with other municipalities. He kind of has a taste of how the board is looking to modify the existing ordinances, but yet we want to expedite this so this doesn't last another 2 years. And so one of the things we were looking at doing here with Frank already working on this was trying to maybe move this along a little quicker here, and especially with Frank kind of tied to working from home, this could be put on his plate to focus more of his attention on and getting this done. And then with that, we could get these edits going through and get the planning commission to review, and ultimately by the end of the year, get a hearing and adoption. Very aggressive time frame, but again, with all the work that Frank has done with his previous background and understanding, thought that this might be some approach that we wanted to do. And really, the board already kind of authorized Frank to do this, but we kind of formalized this a little bit more, I guess. Say the hey, let's get this done by the end of this year. Frank, you want to add to that?
Yeah, John, I'll just fill in a couple items. Just to get everybody on the same page. Over the last year, the entire ordinance was reviewed and edits were identified. And we were moving along. We started to feed information to the Planning Commission, and then Dawn moved on to the Recorder's Office. Jenna moved on to another municipality. John came on board. John had a lot on his plate in the beginning. We were working together on many different pending projects. And we, as John said, we just felt that it was time to get something on paper and get it back before the board. And with more of an emphasis on getting it done. And I think in the information that, John provided, you can see that we do have a very aggressive schedule to get this before the board for consideration by the end of the year. I'm committed to it. I believe everybody at the township is committed to it, and we can certainly make this work.
Questions? Either of you?
I think between the two options, I think we need to decide which way we're heading. As far as for the future, are we committed, agreeance committed to county planning? If so, then I think it would be wise to involve them. If that's not the direction we're headed, given the difference in costs, I'm not sure that that's the best solution.
The other problem, if we don't do county planning, we don't hand it over to county to do it, right? Are we willing to find and extend how much we're going to pay someone to do the job? Because haven't had very much success finding someone in our searches over the last.
And if I can add to this, I sat down with Julie Cheney and talked about what the options are. But that was new to me. Serving how the Londonderry County Planning Commission work there. So she wanted to work with us and kind of explain what other entities have done. I know Frank has worked with other entities too. So that now have been outsourced to the Planning Commission. So there's some familiarity there with it tied in. So yes, I agree that that's certainly a huge point. I'm a proponent of looking to the county to do these things because if you don't, then you have to look at that and the cost. Well, you're going to have to pay Frank if he continues on or the engineer to do the work, try to find and hire somebody and try to retain them and bring them up on board on a lot of work associated with that, a lot of costs.
I've stated before, it makes me very nervous to hand anything away from the township to the county, to the state, I'd rather keep it in-house. But I don't know that we can successfully find someone who, I'm nervous to find someone who can do a good job, who's passionate about zoning, that will, but then again, if we turn it over to the county, are they going to handle zoning how we would want it to be handled?
And the key is, how are the entities written in such a way that it works what the board wants and what Frank has seen with what has worked here and where you're going.
I mean, I've worked with the county. I have properties in other townships. I've had positive experiences with the county. I share your concerns. Anytime it leaves your lap, regardless of where it's going,
Or any example.
Exactly, and it's always, it's a hot issue. They're not happy. So we may not be aware that that's the kind of stuff that lands on your lap fire. But I've had positive experience with the county and working with them in this aspect. And they already okay with that. And I think the risk is, there's nothing to say we can't do that. And, once we get, we're going through a generational step here, all the time we're approaching retirement. So I think it would be one way to help it that, maybe the county's not intimately familiar with our ordinances, but I think that they're familiar with the process, and it would be one thing that could be more higher, even if it's, I'm not talking months, but 5 years from now, someone decides that, now we're acquisition or whatever, or if they're not happy with it, they can bring it back. And I think the cost, if you look at the different two options, I think the cost savings would be pretty rapidly. I mean, it'd be a $1,000 difference or something in the estimated cost. But that's a one-time expenditure, and we're not paying the salary. Like you said, we don't seem to be attracting much interest in $7,000 in the 26th of the total between the. Oh, okay, 7 months. Yeah, that's what, so we don't, and we already increased it from our initial offerings. So,
I guess my one concern is that it is a place our citizens interact with us on a regular basis. That guidance part that was provided previously, I think that calmed a lot of people down. I don't know if the county's going to want to do that.
That was my kind of comments, and nothing against the county. I'm just saying anywhere else.
Yeah.
No matter where it goes, that was my comment. So fire, but they're not happy.
And even when previously, when Dawn was here, they felt they were treated.
Well, she works out. Settle downstairs.
They were settled down.
Any other questions? Send them to Dawn. Sorry, Dawn.
Yeah, sorry, Dawn. No, I mean that. I mean,
I don't know that we'll find someone like that. Like, there's not many people in the world that can, when you're telling them no, that they still smile at you.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. So I guess for now.
Okay. So, do I have a motion to do one of these plans? Any more discussion on that?
I guess my last question is, do we have the funds earmarked set aside to?
We do not, but we have not hired, we don't have anyone employed right now.
We're doing the old shuffle game here, because we have a vacancy there, we're just shifting that over to take care of it. Because ultimately, you have to pay to do the zoning, so we're shuffling funds around to get the job done.
I would make a motion that we go with approach B with the eventual goal of turning it over to county planning.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any more questions, discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Okay. So, good and welfare. Do you gentlemen want to entertain and discuss the resolution that was brought to our attention that other municipalities are passing as a supportive measure to opening up, or not?
I think given some developments, I don't know if anyone saw the letter that the district attorney put out today clarifying her remarks of yesterday.
I did not see that.
I would, given that, yeah, there was some very clarifying things in terms of civil, the civil side of all the potential hearings that she sent out today. Look at this later, I guess.
Okay. Jack?
I have said this numerous times before about endless resolutions, and I just want to. I don't know what'll help. I'm all for it. It'll help
thing just reading, and I don't know if this is true, Patrick, maybe you know, there's been some lawyers out there stating that unless it's an ordinance, being an open, I guess, I don't even know what the ordinance would be besides allowing businesses to remain open, which I can't even imagine. The whole thing is very mind-boggling, but basically that if the municipalities were to make an ordinance saying that businesses were allowed to remain open or to open, that would protect them, say, if they were to, Governor Wolf were to come against them with state police. I don't know if you know anything about that, or.
So you're saying would protect the local business owner or local.
Give them a little bit more, would potentially give them more protection, because in the end, the argument was that the government remains to the people, and the people the government closest to the people are the local municipalities. I mean, unless it's in court, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be a long conversation with a lot of potential issues that come to mind initially. That would be with respect to the type of ordinance you're referring to, which is not what I was forwarded an email, I guess, later this afternoon or early this evening. In the resolution,
yes,
is a little, when you look at the meat of it, it says, now therefore it be resolved that this Board of Supervisors seeks the immediate reopening of Lebanon County and South Londonderry Township, and then it goes on to reference, I guess, the letter from the county, and it's just basically that you're supporting the efforts of the county. So I don't necessarily, if the board is considering moving forward with the resolution, I mean, do I think it's going to accomplish anything? It's letting them know that you support what the county is attempting to do. But is there any teeth in it? Probably not. Do I suggest you move forward with an ordinance? Not right now. We'll have to have a pretty in-depth conversation with respect to that at that point. But where is the board? Is this just kind of open discussion, or does the board have an idea as to what it wants to do at this point?
Well, since we don't talk except in public, Jack's comment about how the resolution really doesn't do anything, which is in essence, it doesn't. It's just a statement saying, yes, we agree with the county. It doesn't really, I guess my point was, Patrick, legally, I don't think it does anything to help the businesses open or protect them in any way, shape, or form.
No, it does not. It does not. But, resolutions for municipalities, you think of some of the resolutions you've passed, there's a good portion of resolutions that are adopted by municipalities asking for relief or asking the state or other entity or agency for some type of action that is beyond the immediate control of the local municipality. So this type of a resolution isn't that uncommon, but does it do anything with respect to protecting a business that would decide to open in Lebanon County, South Londonderry Township? No.
Have either of you had any conversation with any of the commissioners? Or?
Bill Ames, I talked to, via messaging Bill Ames, and he asked if we would support them. He said he was Dave Warner, their solicitor, was working on something for the municipalities to do. But I said, our meeting's tonight. He said, well, can you just verbally support us? Was all I got from Bill Ames. I haven't heard from any of the other commissioners. I have heard from several residents that whatever we can do on a local level to support opening up, please do. So I've not heard anyone say, keep us closed.
I think the issue, and I think it's got to be good, like person by person, personal responsibility. But then you have to civilly be aware that the civil issues that aren't covered by it. And that's what the district attorney made clear in the letter that was today. I think it's yeah, right. There's a lot of civil issues that
Oh, absolutely, and it says in here, it's, if you don't want to open, don't open. If you want to open, open.
yeah, we're
Probably shouldn't have. We seek to be open.
I guess, did Pierre address the threats that Wolf laid out? Insurance,
yeah, that those are legitimate.
occupancy, licensing.
Yes.
So
And
she
that they
addressed
are,
those.
she addressed those and that they are legitimate.
Sure, but we give the occupancy, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that she directly addressed occupancy. She didn't address licensing. I don't have the letter in front of me. I'd much rather know a little bit more about what the county is actually, doing. I know what the district attorney did.
All that their letter said was that we're going to yellow on the 15th, is what I read, right?
There's not a big difference between, I'm just not sure where,
Okay. So I'm hearing no action, or am I hearing action?
If you're willing, I'm willing. I feel strongly about supporting them. I'll say that publicly. I 110% support every ounce of the letter that they wrote stating that we are going to move forward. That came from Bill and the rest of the group. 10%. If you had conversation and you think this would support, I don't have any problem with it. But I'm not telling anybody to do anything other than it's their personal right as citizen, property owner, business owner. They need to take personal responsibility for it. That means they need to open them and they do it. That's up to them. It was their business when they started it. If they want to dwell in their basement and hide, it's their home and their choice and their life.
Patrick, do you see an issue with this proposed resolution?
With the resolution,
Yes.
is it the last one I have, John? I think there were 2 or 3 sent.
Yes, I believe it was the last one that I got during the meeting here. And I
Okay. So I'll read the 2 sections that I really focus in on. I mean, there's a lot of whereas clauses up there, but the 2 provisions that you really want to focus on are the now therefore and the but it further, or be it further resolved. So the first, now therefore be it resolved that this Board of Supervisors seeks immediate reopening of Lebanon County and South Londonderry Township. That's fine. All you're doing is requesting. You're just indicating what you're requesting or seeking. And then the final one is, be it further resolved that this Board of Supervisors of South Londonderry Township supports the continued efforts of our state and local leaders as stated in their May 8, 2020, I'm assuming letter to the Honorable Tom Wolf, to institute plans to move forward under the yellow phase and will require businesses who are ready to reopen to follow CDC guidelines, including requirements such as hand washing, social distancing, and masks, until further guidance is received for the green phase. And again, that last provision is just indicating that the Board of Supervisors supports the continued efforts to institute those plans. So my reading of this resolution is simply that the Board of Supervisors of South Londonderry would be supporting those efforts to move this forward.
Yes.
The May 8th letter, I don't know if I've seen, I think it was attached. Let me see.
I believe if I could paraphrase it, it was basically just the numbers and that the flattening of the curves happened, we're not overwhelmed, and the representatives of Lebanon County, the Senator of Lebanon County, and who else signed it? I forget who else signed it. That they intend to move to public.
Yeah, so again, my reading of that resolution is that you're simply supporting those efforts. You're not making any definitive legislative actions. You're simply, it's a resolution in support of.
Yeah, okay. There's a couple typos in here too.
Yeah, I noticed those when I was reading through.
Oh, those are fixed, yeah, those are both fixed.
Yes.
There's another one.
Yeah, it's not the DDC, it's the CDC. Yeah, there's a couple things that were fixed. Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Patrick, that you would advise us on any of this?
No, I think what I would say is if the board wants to do anything more than this resolution, which is indicating support, I mean, I think we'd have to have, I'd have to look at a couple things and we'd have to have probably a more in-depth conversation at some point, if that's the intent of the board. I'm not sure where the three of you lie on this.
Okay, so at this point, I'll make a motion to approve resolution, it would be 11, John? 11, 2020.
I'll second.
And I have a second. Any questions, comments? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Sorry.
No, okay, I just don't want this to create confusion for anybody. And they need to check into their own situation, not just how they feel, but their legal situation.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I guess I look at this as not a recommendation on any business. The business has to decide for themselves. We're just trying to support a path in which they can do it. Is how I look at it. But
What they do, them, their insurance provider, their license, their attorney,
their husband, their wife, their children, like, that's their decision. We're just saying, as a township, we're supporting the county in going to phase yellow May 15th. But I'm not trying to twist your arm in any way, shape, or form. It's totally up to you.
I mean, we could, if the board wanted to, you could, I mean, this is a resolution. So if you wanted to add some clarifying language, you can at this point, but I'll let that up to if you wanted to, with the understanding that the Board of Supervisors aren't directing anyone to do anything, we're simply supporting the efforts of the county. I mean, you can do something like that.
Well, it says the reopening of the economies of Lebanon County and South Londonderry Township could allow the reopening of business wishing to remain closed would be permitted to do so, and residents who wish to remain at home would be permitted to do so. Unless you want more verbiage.
No, I just have, listen, I don't like the rule of law applied equally. So when other municipalities try to do things like regulate things that they shouldn't, whether it be cell phones or guns or anything else, I don't, it goes against state law or authority, I have a problem there. But I don't.
Where'd you all go? Come on. Why isn't anybody, I don't, what happened to the? I think they got muted somehow. Oh, okay. Hold on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right.
Phew.
Yeah.
That was nay. Okay. Bill votes nay. All right. So our next, does anyone have anything else good, Milker?
So I missed that. Did the resolution pass?
The resolution passed, Jack and I were yay, and Bill was a nay.
Okay.
Our next meeting will be the workshop, May 27th. We're going to be discussing bike path sidewalks, we hope,
We hope I have a call in to find out.
where we're at. Okay. Anything else? So I have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Patrick, are we calling you back, or are you hanging out?
How do you guys? I'm sorry?
We'll call you then.
Just stay here.
Okay.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.